Welcome to Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share their passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with a Latina perspective. This is season 6, and it's going to be featuring Latinas in the food space. I hope this season is inspiring and perhaps even nostalgic as we hear stories we can relate to. I'm so excited to share these stories and talk about food. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hola, I was so happy to be able to talk with Argelia from Vida Cocktails for the podcast. I've been following via social media for a couple years now, so it was a joy to have a great conversation about cocktails. Please enjoy the episode. Hey, I am so excited to be speaking to Argelia from Vida Cocktails. I have been following for like 2 years now. I think I started following in 2020 during the pandemic, and I was looking for things to do, and I found your Instagram, and I just instantly fell in love with what you were doing. So I am so thankful that we get to chat and you get to share your story. But before we get into it, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Karina. And I honestly am so grateful to be here in the room and speaking with you because I also think you're a badass and doing amazing things for our culture. So thank you so much for the invitation. So my name's Argelia Martinez, born and raised in Chicago. I will die here. I say that all the time because I love this city. It truly is the greatest city in the world. And if I weren't from Chicago, I would probably say maybe Mexico City or Guanajuato, near where my parents are from, would be my favorite. But Chicago is where I was born. Vida Mia Cocktails really began in 2018, so 4 years ago. And the reason why it started is because I was actually really hating my job at the moment. I was working at a digital agency. I no longer work there, by the way. And I was working on search, data, and performance metrics, and like all the good things that like digital marketers like are geeks about. And at that moment, I was just not feeling it. I was absolutely looking for something else, a new venture. And at the same time, it was New Year's Eve going into 2018. I was literally sitting there and I wanted to create something that was like something that I was passionate about, that I can be more creative, as well as just like come from the soul. So I was doing some soul searching. I was using some of the tools that I use for my marketing clients when it comes to brand building, building brand equity. And I started to go through the emotions of like, what is my purpose? Like, what is my mission? Like, what do I want to stand for? And with a lot of soul searching that evening on like New Year's Eve, Vida Mia came to life. And I started to think about my memories going to Mexico with my family. My mom is from Huistaza, Hidalgo, which is in the state of Hidalgo. It's very small, very many, it's rare if someone knows it. And I've been going there since I was one. I've been going to Mexico City since I was one, just having the privilege to go back and forth. And what I really love about those trips is the dynamic diversity that is Mexico when it comes to not only beverages and food and whatnot. So when I started Vida Mia, it was exactly to do that, is elevate what we think about Mexico. And I know you do that through your photography and your travel, to get beyond kind of like the tacos and margaritas, which are also really delicious, but try and just like introduce something new. So I started working at doing these pop-up food pairings and beverage pairings at De Colores, which is in Pilsen. And I really started with the agave plant, doing classes, doing educational classes on where does our one of our beloved spirits comes from, starting with tequila, then moving into mezcal, and then providing more education about the plant, where and how it's produced, what makes it different from blue agave to reposado. And people really enjoyed it. It was something fresh, it was something different. I was able to get creative on how to design the event with different flavors that were seasonal and available in Chicago. So it started that way, just like sitting down, having classes, working with a chef on the food. And then fast forward, I mean, right before the pandemic, I was about to do a class of 100 people in a matter of 4 hours. It was going to be 25 people per hour. And we were going to do it at De Colores, going back to my roots and doing a food pairing with the beverage class. And that would have been a super spreader. It got completely shut down. I mean, as it should have, but I was really left with like, what do I do now? Like, so much of my work was in person. So Vida Mia has morphed into not only providing educational classes virtually and in person, but also providing like companies events that could bring that into the office, like the corporate room. They're like into like more B2B. So I've been doing a lot of that, is providing these educational classes for team building at companies. That's been what's keeping me busy since I was solo. And then I'm hoping to get back into like activations that I can open up to the public, but I've been building a team to help me do that this past 2 months.
That is amazing. I love hearing the growth from 2018 when it was just an idea to how you pivoted and then grown so much in just 4 years. So, congratulations on that. I love that you bring in the teaching part of cocktails, like when you serve your clients, because I realized that there was a disconnect between what people perceived Mexico to be and what Mexico actually is. And I like that you said that there's such diversity in foods and beverages, which is something that I didn't realize until I started traveling to different places in Mexico other than just where my family lives. And so I think it's like that is what I love to do, is to educate people on Mexican culture and to showcase the diversity between northern Mexican foods, central Mexican foods, southern Mexican foods. So I love that piece. I think it's an important part of elevating what you do.
Yeah, there's so much I think to dive into when it comes to that. I feel like even you and I are just touching the surface, because it's easy to relate to the places that your parents have facilitated, right, for you to visit. But even then, I don't know enough about just like the Yucatan area. There's we're just uncovering the surface, and it's so cool to see other people in Chicago that are from different areas in Mexico and seeing that manifest in their work. I think as first generation, women, because that's something that's so integral of my upbringing. It's really great to kind of expose that and not hide it. And I think that's been kind of like a good turning point. Maybe it was a 2018 thing with Trump coming into office. Like I felt even more driven to tell people why it's so great to be Mexican American. And I'm seeing so much of that, especially in Chicago, because there's so much. So there's the population, the numbers say it. But finding your work, finding work from other entrepreneurs that are leaning into that and really kind of trying to tell the story from our perspective versus having someone else tell it is really powerful.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better. I definitely agree with you. So I am curious, when you are teaching these workshops and doing like team building activities, has there been any conversations or questions that have come up that have been really powerful in maybe changing mindsets or preconceived ideas of Mexican culture?
I think one thing that gets lost sometimes when we lean into like ordering even margaritas and tequilas is this idea of how it can be treated like a scotch. and like a fine wine. And I think that's probably the biggest aha, is that when I speak to evoking your senses and treating it like we are used to treating like a wine, where you're smelling it, you're swirling it, and you're treating it, you're like kissing it, la mezcal, because it is something that's meant to be sipped and not something that's an immediate shot. I think that's where people slow down, and that's where like the questions come up and like people dig into a little bit more. Like when I start to say that like mezcal, the plant itself, there's a legend, there's indigenous roots that's tied to it, where there were beliefs of like medicinal purposes. Like it really like allows people to pause, because our first introduction, and I am embarrassed to say it for myself, even as like a first gen college graduated student, is unfortunately for me, it was in like my college like experience, and that's not how I would have loved to be introduced like to tequila here. When I was going back to Mexico, I remember my grandpa, like he was using pulque, and I knew what pulque was, and he was like making it from the maguey. He was like getting the sap from the maguey and creating it and mixing it with like prickly pears, and like I didn't really actually get to taste it because I was like, what is that? Like he's milking the plant, and it smells kind of like, it looks like milk. Like I didn't want anything to do with it, but I remember watching him and it happening. So I think it wasn't really until like I dug in deeper, maybe in like my age, like out, I guess my mid 30s, where I was just like, oh, there, that what he was doing was fascinating, and that's carried on for like thousands of years. Like I didn't really value it, I think, until I really sat with like the history maybe of the plant. And so that's why I say it's unfortunate. Like my first maybe introduction would have been like a college student in America, like slamming a tequila, right? But I think it moving into Vida Mia really got me to appreciate kind of what my family maybe was right in front of me. That like I thought it was strange, and I just moved on and didn't ask questions.
Yeah, I think back to my college days too, and that's when I heard the term like I don't do tequila. Like I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. It's messed me up. And then people actually like stay away from it. And I did for a number of years. I think it was 10 years that I was like I can't drink tequila. Like I can't do it. It messes me up. But that's cuz I wasn't drinking it correctly. I was doing it like people do here in the US during college. And so it wasn't until I went to Mexico and I learned about this plant and the process of and the differences between tequila and mezcal and pulque. I think it was 2018 the first time that I tried pulque and like learned about the history. And that's when I realized how my mindset around this beautiful drink that is so rich in history, like I had no idea. And it had been colonized and Americanized to be seen as something that's bad or like, oh, that's just a drink that's going to mess you up. So I love the fact that like our mindsets are changing and perhaps someone who is listening can have a different perspective when it comes to tequila and cocktails, because I know that as you're making cocktails, like that in itself is an art and a craft. I'd love to hear more about those beginning stages of you forming cocktails with this this desire in mind to educate people.
So yeah, it actually starts with the farmers markets for me in terms of using fresh fruit and vegetables. I had the opportunity to live in Michigan for 2 years, going to the farmers markets here. I really liked exploring with seasonal ingredients when it comes to beverages, moving away from using raw white sugar. And a lot of the gravitation towards farmer markets was because it reminded me of those mercados from Mexico where you would go and see all of the fresh produce, but also in La Garra in Chicago, where we would also get to see all the seasonal fruits that were available as well. So it really starts there. And then the ideas really begin with once you have a really good seasonal fruit, for example, and you have a garden that's full of like herbs that you can use to garnish. My mom has always been a green thumb and has always had like rosemary, flowers, mint growing in the backyard, and grapes. God, she has grapes and peaches in there. But it's just it really like allowed me to like kind of again appreciate what was in front of me and starting to just do it naturally, do it with a storyline, and do it in a way that can be healthy, and moving away from those pre-mixed sour, like sweet and sour drinks that are loaded in sugar, and really appreciating the natural sugars from the fruit. I also trying to lean into piloncillo, so knowing that our raw cane sugar is popular with cafe, and other desserts, like trying to lean into some of those like raw cane sugar. Um, so a lot of it started there, and because of my mom's gardens, one of my signature touches for my beverages is usually having an edible flower, whether it's the edible flower and an herb or either out one. But I grabbed inspiration from my mom as well as just those trips to the farmers markets, whether they're here or in Mexico.
That's it's making my mouth water and like want your cocktails because you describe it so beautifully, and I appreciate the thought behind it. And I think that like I wish more people could understand the art that really does and the culinary knowledge that is needed to make cocktails. Like it's not just the $5 margaritas that you see advertised during Cinco de Mayo. Like this is an actual thoughtful process. So thank you for
Yeah,
explaining that.
and I know that you visit Mexico a lot, along with doing it over the course of several years. Have you seen the artisanal salts? So, one thing that I've been doing more of intentionally is using crushed hibiscus tea, crushed rose petals, and incorporating that into that aspect of it. So, like, that just brings another area of just culinary additions that is so rich. Like, going back to that, like, and I just hope that, like, as I do it and I see more people do it, that we really ask for its value in terms of not underpricing things, because sometimes when people see food as like non-American, even just like tacos take so much to make a real tortilla if you're going to serve it that way. Steak is expensive, marinating it, garnishing it. And yet, so many times people complain how it is one, if it's priced for like too much, like it's not like I can get that for $3 or $4 somewhere else. So, like, I feel like the perception of tacos, for example, is underpriced because people consider it like street food, like maybe even the perception that it is Mexican, that therefore it doesn't require the same price point as the Italian pasta. And so I just wish that, like, with the cocktail piece too, that like we continue to add value as you would get like a fancy old fashioned, because you're using quality agave spirits and there's a craft behind it. So that's the direction that I hope to continue building, is this perception of premium, and like that it's a craft. Like it's just like you would get like a premium, American beverage. I don't know.
Yes, I hope that. And I think people are starting to realize that, or at least being open to the conversation around it. I think the more we talk about it and the more we purpose to elevate and share the history, the foundation, the thought behind it, the more people will get it and appreciate it.
I agree.
As you were transitioning from a 9 to 5 to having your own business, were there people that influenced you or supported you? Or because I know building a business is hard work, and it's so important to have a support system and people encouraging you along the way. So were there any people in your life that really helped you uh, leverage your knowledge, your time, your expertise, and grow?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that my motto is to um, build different streams of income that bring you joy. And I haven't transitioned out of my 9 to 5, and I don't plan to anytime soon. And so I say that because I've been blessed to have started this first and then joined the where I'm now, which is a marketing firm called Hosworth and Co. And I've built, credibility as well as trust to be able to kind of like make sure that my schedule, as we're working 100% remote, that I'm meeting my commitments at my technically my 9 to 5, but I literally start work sometimes at 7:30 and till 3:30, and then I activate events at 5 or so. So I say that because I am a true believer, for anyone listening here, is that multiple streams of income is the way that I want to build, wealth, not only for myself, for like my future kids, but I don't see myself fully being Vida Mia. I do see myself building a team, and I do feel myself growing it, and always having it be my child. So I see it as it being my firstborn. But I'm a marketer at heart, so that's where my kind of upbringing was, and I still enjoy it. Like I still enjoy what I do, and again, changing of the arms from the company I was at before that brought this idea to me. But I think as long as I continue growing with Vida Mia, as well as um, my marketing job at Hosworth and Co., I will continue to feel happy and fulfilled. There are a lot of people that have helped me along the way. Oh my gosh, like my friends and family have been so supportive in thinking of me as they're moving also along in their companies, bringing me in for team building exercises with Vida Mia, creating experiences for their coworkers. And I have had the blessing of also being a part of an accelerated group in this March, actually, where I was, 6 weeks. It was after work, and that's where I really got to really learn how to build like cash flow management, how to build operations and training so that I can pass my skill set and train others to be able to do what I do and replicate myself. I wasn't able to do that during the pandemic because it was just a struggle overall, as I know everyone's kind of trying to, you know, be able to build something out of the bad, right? And I think I'm trying to understand the niche, right, where I can still be a working business without being always in person. So I think that's like the challenge of this, but I've been able to learn how to do hybrid. And I think my network has been really supportive and just referring me. A lot of my business is referrals. Instagram has been great. That's how we met. But I am building out my presence. So I'm going to get in front of LinkedIn to like really be able to build those bridges between B2B and what I want to do with, direct to consumer. So I'm continuing to learn. And as long as that's the case, I remain happy, and I wake up like a crazy maniac at 7, maybe earlier. And I try and do Vida Mia at least an hour before I start my full time job, and then I'll take an hour after work. Recently, I started to work Fridays on Vida Mia as my CEO day, and then condensing my schedule Mondays through Thursday at my full time job. So that's kind of how I roll right now.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I really appreciate that perspective on entrepreneurship and balance, like life balance. I think a lot of times people think maybe entrepreneurship, like you have to go in 100% and like only devote your time to what you're trying to build. But in reality, like even that's even cultural, like to have different streams of income and like the fact that you said that you want to focus on what makes you happy and you feel fulfilled in life. I think that is the goal that a lot of us are relearning and trying to adapt and have in our own lives. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective on building your business. I think I have noticed that you do a lot of collaborations, and I think that goes to show like your desire to grow a team, but also like grow in your community and not just do everything alone. And I love to see it. Like, I love seeing the events that you have coming up, and it's like in collaboration with or partnership with. And I think that's the first time that I went to an event. It was online, but it was in collaboration with some other people that were giving history. It was during the holidays of 2020. And like I picked up the bag with the drinks, and then we sat and like watched and listened to other people story tell in collaboration with you telling about the drinks. And it happened so beautifully. And I was like, this was a great event. And even though it wasn't in person, like I still felt like it was like I was part of a community. So how do you go about like finding those collaborations? Do they come to you? Do you seek them out? How does that happen?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for supporting during such a difficult time that was 2020. It's almost going to make me cry because I think we were all going through the same emotions. And when you're able to build something because it was hard and it impacted someone, like it actually makes me want to cry because at the same time, like I felt like, God, like when is this going to end? And it was just, it was those moments of joy that reminded you that you're not alone. And I think what you're referencing to are five or maybe three of those that were my favorite. One of them was reimagining Frida Kahlo, and it was reclaiming who she is on her birthday. And then another one was Cinco de Mayo and celebrating it as we would want to see it celebrated. And then the other one that I loved was the January 6th, de Reyes, and I loved all of those because when I chose who to collaborate with, a lot of it was based on people that were supporting me, and that I was also supporting them and seeing how they were getting through the pandemic. Um, and whenever I find that someone says yes, I'm like, let's do it. Let's come on, let's go. Like, I don't want this to be, I'm not a ruler. Like, let's just bring your granito, I bring in mine. And then that's kind of how you thread it together. And if I only focus on the cocktail piece and you can help me stay honest on the historical facts, I think things become so beautiful when you invite others and they share their lived experience, and it just is it's so enriching not only for the audience but also for the people participating. And you're just reminding me how I miss those, and I would love to do one together and do another like Instagram type of uh, feature.
Yes. Yes, it was the January 6th one, and I loved how it all came together. We had um, stuff to eat, we had stuff to drink, and it really was a time where I was looking for those connections online because we couldn't do them in person. And so I just appreciate everyone who had that opportunity to do online
Hmm.
events.
Yeah, I agree.
So thinking back to your childhood, are there any foods or drinks that you remember being a favorite and have carried on to maybe being a favorite today, or an inspiration in the things that you create?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with hibiscus. Do you like agua de Jamaica?
Yes.
And when was your first time falling in love with agua de Jamaica?
I think it was when I was in Mexico, probably in 2017, 2018. Because usually when I would go to restaurants, I'd get the horchata, or
Hmm.
like it was either horchata or jamaica, and I would gravitate toward the horchata because it,
Hmm.
I don't know,
Same.
as a kid, that's what I would drink.
Yeah.
But in my adulthood, I started gravitating toward the jamaica.
Isn't that something? Like, my parents used to take me to Aguascalientes to get gorditas, like on Cicero and Cermak. And I would always do horchata. It was like a no brainer. Like, yes, horchata, cinnamon, like, right. Yeah, it was all good. But I think agua de Jamaica has a really special place because it's pink, first of all, but just going to the mercados and getting food and then being able to get different agua frescas. And once I started to really like, my mom makes the best agua de Jamaica, by the way. But like experiencing it first in Mexico, along with the street food and the agua frescas, I'm discovering that like other cultures also really love agua de Jamaica and hibiscus, and it I think that hibiscus and cinnamon are a good thread into other cultures because of the European journey, right, and the Spanish journey into like Philippines and the Caribbean and Mexico. And I think it's really fascinating to see how that beverage specifically is revered and that people believe. And it's allowing you to relieve some blood pressure. It's said that it's allowing you to like help you like kind of manage that a little. It's also really popular with like the black culture in using like hibiscus tea and using it. I know that there's like a through line with hibiscus being something that people appreciate in many different cultures. So it's really cool to grow up with that and then know that that is something that you can, that's universal and that you can connect with others and your memories of like when was a, like what does that remind you of? What is the taste? What is that reminding you going back as a child? It's just one of those foods.
Yeah, I always like to, like, things that I make now or I'm learning how to make are so nostalgic from either going to Mexico when I was a kid, or when my abuela or tia would come to visit during the summer and she would cook. So I always like to ask, like, what was your favorite childhood thing to eat? And it's interesting how that has played through to adulthood for us now. And I love that history that you just shared. That's so fascinating. I didn't really think about that before, or the origins of the jamaica before. Well, something that I always like to ask my guests is if they have any encouragement or advice for the next generation. Because I know that we, as millennials or as first gen, we're doing a lot of work, healing work, and we're bridging essentially two generations: our parents' generation, their grandparents, and the generation that comes after us, the youth that are watching, the young adults that are watching us, as we build and navigate this duality of being US, like living in the US, but being Latinas. So, what encouragement or advice would you give to uh, someone that is coming up in the entrepreneurship world, or just into adulthood?
Yeah, I'll give two pieces of advice. The first one is for people who are coming into adulthood, and the second one is for people who are entrepreneurs or thinking about it. I think the first one for me is to always show your light. Like I felt like when I was, and I'm 40 by the way. I'll share that here. But like I really didn't start this until my mid 30s, and I say that because I felt that I was always appeasing other people in my past lives professionally, and I would compartmentalize how I would show up. And I would say, call me RG, call me like Argelia to the people that I knew spoke Spanish, call me like, or like I would compartmentalize things because my name was always hard and I didn't look American. So I wanted to fit in. And what I've learned from youth is how beautiful it is to show up as your full self pretty much in all spaces. Like, why do we have to do that? And I understand why people wanted to assimilate, but I feel like being an older millennial, like I was saw both worlds, just like I saw analog and digital. Like I know what it meant to have a mixtape, and I felt that professionally. And so I really learned from Ozama St. John, which was the former CMO of Netflix and Uber and Pepsi. Like, she is Ghanaian and she shows up in her vibrant colors with her hair as she pleases. And when I first saw her walk in those rooms in corporate America and be her full self, I was just like, I want that courage. Like, I want that, like, badass courage to walk in, and I feel finally that I'm living up to that. So what I say to people who are coming into their adulthood, in their career, wherever you are, is show up as your full light. And if people don't like you, then they're not your people. You will light attracts light. So that is my like first piece of advice. And then I think for entrepreneurs, every path is going to be unique. Every path is going to be what is meant for you. And so I discourage people comparing themselves to other people, but I do encourage like do it in your own time. Like the time is right when you feel that calling, but also you've prepared like, okay, how can I actually be able to, pay my bill off of this and make money. I mean, at the end of the day, we're providing a service. So whether that is diversifying your income and doing this until you become full time, or going all in and working with incubators, accelerator programs, finding grants, like there's so much for us available in terms of resources, that whatever your path is, as long as you hold steady, you will be successful, and invite others to join that journey with you so that you can find those funds and you can find people to complement the things that you are not great at. Like, I am not great at, okay, I know someone who is, and you ask for advice. So, entrepreneurship is not meant to be alone. That's like, period. It's not. So, whatever your path ends up being, it's unique to you. And as long as you show up as your full light, like you will attract others that will want to help you and see you grow.
Yes, that is amazing advice. I hope our listeners are inspired and find hope in that, because it might seem like, okay, yes, we hear people telling me like, okay, yeah, be myself, but to actually believe that and hold on to that is huge. And I wish that someone would have told me when I started 20 plus years ago. um, I am also an older millennial, and I am just grateful now to have that space and people around me like you giving that advice, and for us to be able to come together and pass that down to the next generation. So thank you so much for sharing that. um, this has been an amazing conversation, but before we leave, I'd love for you to share where people can follow you, find your next events, and if there's anything that we should be looking out for in the next few months, let us know.
Yeah, thank you. And you saying that just now, before I get to where do people find me, makes me feel like we're gonna be all right, not only just for ourselves, but also for the youth, right? That whether it's your kids watching you, what you do, like my future kids, like I feel so optimistic about the future. I can be found mainly, I would say, Instagram, Vida underscore Mia underscore cocktails. I am building out my LinkedIn, which is live. So if you want to connect through there, that is a plus. I have a website, vidamiacocktails.com. And what's coming up is I'm going to have a public event in October. And if the weather in Chicago doesn't throw me lightning, I will be serving out of my mobile camper. So it will be the first time that it's out to the public, and the mobile camper will be like you see in California and some of the warmer climate areas. It'll be a mobile bar, so that is the plan, and I can't wait to reveal it. That is just one tenant of the business. I will continue to do virtual, hybrid classes, and hopefully get back into the restaurant beverage and food pairing. I haven't done one in a long time, and I miss it. So I'm hoping that with the holidays, that will come to fruition with good planning.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited about this camper. I think it'll be a huge hit.
Yeah, there's nothing like it right now. So
Yeah.
I am telling you for the first time that there's going to be a reveal in October, but it'll
Yay.
be exciting.
Awesome. Well, when that happens, I will for sure be posting on social, reposting, trying to promote that because I'm excited. And that's going to be huge. So, anyway, thank you so much for your time. This conversation has been amazing, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait for a future collaboration.
Awesome. We'll talk later.
Bye.
Bye. Don't you just want to have a refreshing cocktail or agua de jamaica after listening? If you haven't yet, follow her on Instagram to find out where she'll be hosting a pop-up or another event. It really is an amazing experience. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. There'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot and post on Instagram and tag at Elevating La Cultura. Or you can comment on our YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating la cultura. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.